Hello and welcome to Gardening Australia. We have got some real treats in store for you this week, and I know you're going to love digging in. Here's what's coming up.
I'm a bit sad because my apricot trees have succumbed to a fungal disease, which means I have to take them out to stop it from spreading to other trees in my orchard. But on the bright side, I'm excited to show you what I'm planting in their place.
Jerry opens up on cucumbers.
What makes a burpless cucumber burpless?
As gardens get smaller, there's not much space for larger shrubs and trees. But don't despair, I'm going to show you some fabulous smaller versions of your old favourites.
And like me, if you're struggling for growing space on the ground, then I've got the perfect solution for you. A vertical growing scheme that's productive, repurposes lots of bits and pieces from around your home, and it won't take you to the cleaners, but may take you to the laundry. Once a year, Melbourne welcomes to town the wonderful Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, or MIFGS to those in the know. And Millie and Tammy have got a front row seat.
Each year, over 5 days, the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show draws over 100,000 visitors to celebrate the love of gardening and view impressive installations by florists, gardeners and landscapers alike.
The show is buzzing with visitors exploring the retail stores, info stores, and best of all, the competition gardens.
I know we're not going to get to everything, Tammy, but I'm certainly willing to try. What are you excited about?
Well, this year we're honing in on the Landscape Design Show competition, where Australia and some of the world's best have come together to showcase where gardening's at today.
There'll be so many ideas out there. I can't wait.
Well, let's go.
One of the gold medal winning gardens is Saltbush, collaboratively designed by Fiona Brockhoff and Philip Withers.
The name Saltbush comes from the journey starting the salt in the dunes and then travelling through the different plant communities to the bush. It's about discovering Victorian flora and its uniqueness, which I think is often not celebrated.
We grew about 3,000 plants for this project, and we wanted to make sure that diversity was there, that we could really showcase some plants that maybe don't get readily used in the garden.
One of those plants is the humble coastal saltbush.
So this is all obviously the dunal sort of area, so frontline coastal, and part of that is this Atriplex cinerea, which a wonderful, unique plant.
I love it, the way that it pops up through the tussocks and the light catches it, I think, so beautiful.
Another great garden choice is Banksia integrifolia, or coastal Banksia.
There's generally always a cone or a flower to be seen. It attracts a lot of pollinators, birds particularly, and insects. And I just love the way that it sort of has this whitish silver underside to its leaf, which sort of tends to dance around in the breeze. I think it offers so much to the garden. Beautiful trunk, interesting form, and definitely a favourite of mine.
As the garden moves away from coastal communities towards the bush, some iconic plants come into play.
The Xanthera australis is uniquely Victorian. Beautiful habit, the foliage sort of whiffs over the top, large sculptural trunk.
These specimens were salvaged from a local quarry. It's all part of a design philosophy that carefully considered every element.
I think Phil and I really wanted to show how you could design and build a very beautiful and functional garden from materials that were either recycled, repurposed, reconstituted. So it's a zero waste garden.
For my money, it's a resounding success.
I still get really excited about creating gardens that people connect to. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it's about, isn't it? Connecting people to nature to biodiversity. After all, we are nature, rather than sort of fighting it, being a part of it.
The designers of silver medal winning garden, New Nordic Notes, have created a little Scandinavian haven right here in Melbourne.
This garden is really a celebration and inspiration from the Nordics, from our past, both in terms of plants and hard landscaping.
Kajsa and Annika were both raised in Sweden and have used familiar materials from their childhoods.
We've got birch trees in the garden, and in Sweden we have lots of birch forests. And so as you walk through a birch forest in Sweden, you've got the understory of the ferns. It's a really lush green sort of feel, and normally you then come to a spot where it's a lot more sunny, and that's where you see the anemones and the really delicate flowers and wild strawberries. And that's why we've got strawberries in our garden to represent the wild strawberries of the forests in Sweden.
There is a Swedish word called smultronställe.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. So, and it really means smultron is wild strawberry and ställe is a place. And a smultronställe in Swedish means that it's your own private place, free from stress. It's a tranquil place where you kind of go deep into who you are, and we want these platforms to be, you know, you can move around as you like in the garden rather than have specific places to be. Yeah. And lay down, sit down, put your feet into the water and write your own stories, basically.
That sounds like a lovely place to be.
Yeah.
The garden features traditional Nordic design motifs, like plywood weaving and wooden heart shapes throughout. And take it from me, it's a pretty good place to chill out and contemplate.
One of the most intriguing designs is by Irishman Peter Donegan, whose garden tells a powerful story.
It's a tale of bittersweet, but it tells the tale of a veteran who tries to return home to a place he can call home circa 1984 at 40 years of age, and things just aren't as right as maybe they seem. And it's a difficult one to tell when you translate that daydream into a garden.
Since this story of a veteran returning home is set in the 80s, Peter chose plants that were fashionable at the time.
It's the first time I've planted a conifer since I was 17 years of age, fresh out of college, year one. You've got green and lime euphorbias, achilleas that are reticent maybe of the tiles my grandmother had at the back of her bathroom, and everything is sort of a sickly off pink. But if you delve into the mindset of this veteran we've based it on, who is a culmination of many stories we've heard, and the grass should have been cut maybe about 3 weeks ago. In a normal show garden, it would be streamlined and done with a perfect brand spanking new edging shears, but it's that imperfection where the mind maybe isn't in its rightful place or as it was beforehand. And the closer you get to the cabin, the more you realise the story isn't as maybe perfect as it might seem.
Every detail has been painstakingly designed to paint a picture of a life of someone affected by post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's affected visitors in a variety of ways.
We know yesterday that they had 3 people explain that a friend or a colleague or a loved one ultimately needs some help. And that's one side of it. The other side is people coming by just saying thank you, but tears in their eyes.
Peter's design is certainly one of a kind and showcases the power our gardens have to tell stories and to help heal.
I will say what I said though, if you come to the show, you see a plane flying overhead and you smile, I'll take that as well, and it's meant to be that, but if you read a little bit further, that's good as well.
Yeah. Tammy and I will be back later in the episode with some more inspiring gardens from Mifkas.
Can you recommend a native tree for a narrow spot? Well, the classic answer is the native frangipani. Now, it's a surprisingly hardy rainforest tree that generally gets to about 5 metres wide. For something more obscure, try celery wood, Palissians elegans. Now, it's tall and very slender, often umbrella-shaped, a bit like a palm tree. Now, it's fast-growing and about 6 metres across at its widest. Its distribution is from Jervis Bay in New South Wales to northeast Queensland. If you need something with foliage all the way down, consider specific forms, the blueberry ash, Elaeocarpus reticulatus. Now, it's a perfect screening plant covered with masses of frilly pink flowers, and it's generally about 5 metres wide. But there are cultivars like Prima Donna that get to about 3 metres, perfect for that narrow spot.
What is diatomaceous earth? Diatomaceous earth is made up of the pulverised, fossilised remains of silica-rich bodies of organisms called diatoms. And when it's ground up into really fine microscopic particles, it can be used as a type of insecticide because it dries out soft-bodied insects like aphids and mealybugs and some mites, others as well, and it gets caught up in the joints of their exoskeleton. A horrible way to die, but it's quite effective. The important thing is when you're applying it, always wear a mask because it can be hazardous to breathe it in.
When should I fertilise indoor plants? Common advice is to fertilise indoor plants in spring at the start of their growing season. But this really does depend on the conditions in your home. Some of our indoor plants continue growing regardless of the season. Pay attention to how your plants react to changes in light and temperature. Do you see any new growth? Especially if you're using things like grow lights, humidifiers and other mechanical aids to help with plant growth. The seasonal changes that tell plants to hold off on growing may not be as pronounced. So if your plants are growing, they'll need a feed regardless.
Gardening can be a challenge. Often things don't turn out the way we want. But when that happens, it can be a chance to move in a new direction. Hannah has been battling with a tricky pest at her place, and she wants to share with us what she's got planned for her next move.
I've got an early start today because I've got a pretty big job ahead of me, and it's a bit of a sad one because I had to take out 2 apricot trees as they've been impacted by a fungal disease with no cure. But the sooner I take them out, the sooner I can plant my 2 new fruit trees. Ollie, I'm going. This is one of my apricot trees, which is around 8 years old. However, it's never really thrived here, and over the last few seasons, they've been really wet and mild, making it the perfect environment for fungal pathogens to flourish. The particular fungal disease that I have is called verticillium wilt, or black heart, and it actually took me a few years to work out what was going wrong here because I didn't know all the signs. But some of them included that the fruit was getting more and more thrifty, more sparse, the leaves are wilting and dropping off, and there's lots of dead wood appearing in the canopy. Finally, this season when we're pruning it, we noticed lots of internal rot in some of the lower branches, which is kind of like the nail in the coffin. So I've got no choice, it has to go. Of course, when you're chainsawing, don't forget your safety gear. As you can see, the black heart is pretty plainly obviously there. It's devastating to see, but this is the reality we're working with today. This fungus is a big problem because it actually stops the water travelling up from the roots to the top of the tree. No wonder I haven't had many apricots in recent years. You can find this fungus worldwide, but it really has a great time in temperate regions like Tasmania. It impacts apricot trees, but all stone fruits, so your plums, your nectarine, your peaches, and nuts like almonds and walnut. It's really important to remove all the timber off your property. You definitely do not want to cycle it back through your compost or mulching systems because it could spread fungus through your whole garden, which would be devastating. Instead, pop it into your council's green waste facility or use it as firewood. And now we can move on to the happier stage of today, which is planting our new fruit trees. I've chosen some Nashi pears, in particular a 20th century Nashi, and I'll have another one for good pollination as well. Like apples, they're not impacted by the black heart fungal disease, which is very important. You never want to plant another apricot or stone fruit or nut tree in this area again, unfortunately. But luckily, I love Nashis. It's too wet today to dig out the stump, but a few days ago, I ripped out another apricot tree suffering from the same disease and prepared the hole, ready for planting. We've got lots of good compost here, mixed in with some old mulchy stuff, plus some coarse potting sand, which the Nashi pears are going to love. There's a fair bit of water in that bottom of the hole, which is not always great. It means you have really heavy clay soils. And that's why I've dug it extra deep. So I've taken all that heavy clay out and I'm replacing it with this free draining mix. This is a bare-rooted fruit tree, and now in winter is the perfect time to pop them in the ground. And when you do that, make sure you get the levels right, so no part of this trunk will be below the soil line, otherwise you're at risk of getting collar rot. And collar rot is something that happens when the outer shell of your trunk starts to rot and fungus moves into your trunk. And all we're doing here is trying to avoid more fungal disease. Next step is to backfill. When you plant a fruit tree like this, it's the perfect time to do some pruning so it can be shaped for future growth. Today I'm going to take out the central leader and just a little bit of length off the branches so it's ready for spring growth. I cap it up with a bit of mulch to help keep that moisture in and stop any weeds from popping up. And last but not least, I'm going to plant some Mexican sagebush on either side of my Nashi pear. I've transplanted these from another part of my garden. I love them because they attract the pollinators and they help keep the grass at bay. You come to help just as I'm finishing. Oh, thank you so much. There we go. Come on, come on. And there you go, it's all finished. I'm pretty happy with that, but I reckon this weather is even a little bit too wet for me, so I'm going to call it a day. While my apricot trees are no more, I've kept a few small branches to turn into spoons as souvenirs from my kitchen. I hope my experience has taught you a few things about how to recognise fungal disease in your fruit trees to avoid any future heartache.
What makes a burpless cucumber burpless? Well, there are varieties of cucumber which are sold as being burpless, and they are supposed to reduce that risk. Their characteristics are thin skins and fewer seeds. There are 3 suggestions as to what it might be that makes a cucumber burpy. The first is a thick skin, the second is the seed, and the third one is cucurbitine, which is a naturally occurring compound found in all types of cucumber. If you do grow burpless cucumbers, you can't really use them for pickling because during the pickling process, their thin skins make them soft and mushy. They lose their crunch. And sadly, scientific research into the factors that may lead to the burpiness of a cucumber has somewhat taken the wind out of the sails of the argument because none of them have been proven to be causing the burpiness in those cucumbers. So you can grow them, but unfortunately, a burpless cucumber is unlikely to reduce your BPM, your burps per minute.
Have you ever looked at a tree and thought, gee, I wish I could fit one of those in at my place? Well, Janie's here with a few pint-sized picks that will help you get the look you want in half the space.
As higher density living increases, the quarter-acre block is becoming a thing of the past. And it means that people who have a garden have less space in which to grow larger trees or shrubs. But all is not lost. Plant breeders have been busy cultivating smaller, more compact varieties of some of our favourites. You can even grow many of them in pots, and that's perfect for courtyards and balconies. So while spaces are shrinking, your selections still remain sizable. One old school favourite is the camellia, and it's found in gardens of so many 1950s and 60s Australian homes. But their history actually dates back thousands of years to China. Now, camellias are famous for two things: their glossy, dark, evergreen foliage and their potential for abundant flowering in autumn and winter. And these flowers, they come in various shades of pink and reds and whites. Many camellias do grow really tall, like 5 metres. That's quite a size. But there's so many that are being bred nowadays to fit into these smaller spaces. And this one is a perfect one, Camellia Paradise Petite. It's a beauty because it's got smaller leaves that you can make a hedge out of it. It only grows to 1.5 metres high, and it produces loads of pink flowers from autumn into winter, and it can handle full sun really well or part shade. While most camellias are shrubs, this one is a bit different. It's Camellia sasanqua Marge Miller, and don't you love that name? So Aussie. And the glossy green leaves make this plant, but it's been bred as a ground cover. It only grows 1/3 of a metre high, and it'll spread out and really thicken up. And it produces soft pink double flowers in autumn. It can be planted under trees and over retaining walls, and it can cope with a little bit more sun if you mulch and water on really hot days. There are so many low-growing shrubs that are old-fashioned. They were grown many years ago and many people have forgotten about them. And this is one. This is a beauty. It's tough and hardy. It's called Pieris, or lily of the valley shrub, and you can see why. The flowers are like little lily of the valley, dear little things hanging down from these stems, and they just look magnificent. This one's called Christmas Cheer, and it grows about 1 metre high in a pot or in a garden bed. You can keep it low just by pruning it back. So for a smaller growing plant, this is the one, Pieris Christmas Cheer. There's also some great compact native plants like this one. This is an Acacia fimbriata. Now, Acacia fimbriata is a big tree, about 4 to 5 metres high. This one only goes 1.5 to 2 metres high, and it's a really good one. Lovely fine foliage, and this lemony flower in a cluster like that is just gorgeous. The thing about it, it can grow anywhere you like, sunny, part shade, as long as it's well drained. And once it's established, you really don't have to water it very much at all. Give it a light prune just to keep it really tight and compact. It's a great form, this dwarfed form of Acacia fimbriata. Some other native plants that are hardy that you might consider if you're short of space are the Westringias. And there's a whole lot of them. Westringia is commonly called the native rosemary or coastal rosemary, and it's in the same family as salvias and thyme and the native mints. The original Westringia is Westringia fruticosa, and it grows about 2 metres tall if you let it. It can be pruned. Very tough and hardy in most conditions, and it's a really good plant. But there are lots of other ones that are bred to be smaller. This is a little hybrid that's called Funky Chunky. It's a terrific one because it's got a little cute, chunky shape. You can prune it if you want to, tip prune it when it finishes flowering, and it only grows about 60 centimetres, maybe a little bit taller. Perfect in a pot, perfect by the seaside to give you just a nice little lift in the garden. You can plant it in the ground or in a pot as long as it's in full sun or even part shade. And I love that name. Where do they get Funky Chunky from? If you're looking for a really pretty ornamental, the low-growing shrubby thryptomines are a real asset in any garden. These native plants produce masses of tiny pink flowers for months, and they attract butterflies and other pollinators. As cut flowers, they last really well too. They're really tough plants once they're established, as long as they're given a well-drained spot and full sun. Even large trees are available in dwarfed varieties. This olive is called Mediterranean midget, and it reaches 1 to 1.5 metres high, but it can be kept smaller with a little bit of judicious pruning. Just go round like this, snipping off the tips. It's bred for hedging, and it's a non-fruiting variety, allowing you to enjoy the olive green-grey foliage without self-seeding everywhere. If it's bright colour and edible produce that you're wanting, there's plenty of dwarf citrus plants that you can get. Worth putting in a pot, and certainly make sure you give it full sun. So you don't have to have a large garden to have a lovely mix of foliage, of forms and flowers. So why not get out, get hunting for compact and dwarf varieties and get growing.
Still to come on Gardening Australia. Sophie keeps your indoor plants ticking over the cooler months. Josh unpeels the onion family. And we meet a doctor and nurse growing together. Whether it's growing potatoes in a bin, finding room for hanging baskets, or creating a green wall with succulents, us gardeners are always trying to pack as much as we can into the spaces that we have. Well, today I'm going to show you how to take your planting to a higher level using some really basic materials. Welcome to my vertical planting scheme in a laundry basket. With this idea, you can plant strawberries, cut flowers, lettuce, or any leafy greens in a small sunny spot in your backyard or garden. The thing I love about this project is that all the materials you see here, some you may have at home, others you may find out and about. For example, this piece of PVC pipe, and I just had a piece at home, which was perfect. This basket, well, I found that on the street, exactly what I needed. Some of this hessian was an old tablecloth, I think. I had some chicken pellets. Oh, the strawberries. I was at a school and they'd just thinned their strawberries, so I got all of these beautiful strawberries from Maruya High School. Thanks for that. Really, I think the only thing I ended up buying was a few lettuce seedlings because I didn't have any growing at the moment. Now, this basket was destined for landfill where it would have sat in the ground for lots and lots of years. It's still got plenty of value to it. It's got a little bit of a split here, which was why it was thrown out. So what I'm going to do is just get a couple of cable ties, bring that together, and it'll be as good as new and do the job that we need it to do. All right, that's the repair job on the basket done. The next task is to deal with the drainage. So I don't want to put the holes right in the base because if I do that, then all the water will drain out and it'll require more regular watering. And because the base is upturned, I'm going to use that as a bit of a wicking well. So I'm going to drill some holes about 25, 30 millimetres up for the drainage. The next step is to do the liner. I'm using some of this hessian, so I just need to spread it out around the internal perimeter. And if you don't have hessian like this, there's lots of hessian bags, potato sacks. They'd be perfect because it would fit in there nicely. You could literally hang it straight over. Now that looks pretty good. So the next step is to put our piece of PVC in. I've pre-drilled holes into it, and it serves two purposes. First of all, it provides oxygen down deep into the soil, but then you can also water through here so that the water comes out and disperses all the way down right the depth of the entire basket. To stop any soil from getting in there, I'm just using this old saucer that I had, and funnily enough, it fits like a glove. It's perfect. So now I'm going to get the soil, put it up here. So this planting soil consists of a couple of different potting mixes that I had in half-empty bags. I've added some chicken manure to it. I've also mixed a little bit of sand as well, and it's a really nice light mix. Well, that looks pretty good to me. All the soil's in, the ag pipe is nice and stable, the cap did its job. Now what's left to do is to fill the ag pipe with some rubble. So this here is some old terracotta pots and pipes that were laying around at home or broken. It's perfect for the drainage medium to go into the pipe. So next step is the planting. Now, I need to cut a hole into the hessian. Just dig around in there to make a little bit of space for the strawberry to go in. My grandfather used to line the paths with strawberries, and I can smell them even now. So this is ideal because strawberries love to hang. Well, there's the strawberries done, and you can start to see the density that I'm planting this at. There's a nice gap down the middle, so there's my opportunity to plant something like these leafy greens, this cos lettuce. But you could even go with some cascading herbs like thyme or oregano, and they'd do a great job through there as well. Now, the beauty of this vertical planting system is, unlike in a normal container, we're getting all of this planting real estate and we still get the top. So what I'm going to do around the top, I mean, you could plant anything to cascade, be that herbs, natives for that matter, but this is a strawberry planter first and foremost for me. So I'm going to run strawberries around the edge, and in the middle around the drainage pipe, I'm going to put a few more lettuce, this time the red oak. So the final thing to do is find a good sunny spot for your basket, but don't water it until you've found your spot, because there's a bit of soil in here and it will get heavy. Give it a good soaking, and then you can water through the ag line here in the centre, and that'll get water out to all of the plants. It's such a fun and simple way to grow in space that you otherwise wouldn't have been using. And in no time, you'll get a bumper crop, in this case, strawberries and lettuce. The kids will love it. Give it a go.
Many indoor plants are from the tropics, so need care when being rehomed in colder climates. Some of the best indoor performers are actually rainforest plants, where they've adapted to growing under tall trees where they only get filtered or indirect light. Over the cooler weather, it's worth considering their needs to avoid them suffering from conditions we find comfortable indoors. If you've got a heater that blows out hot air, it can quickly dry out plants that prefer humid conditions. So move plants away from hot airflow. Likewise, cold drafts coming from doors or windows should be avoided. From mid-autumn till mid-spring, the sun is lower in the sky, which means that the angle that the sun comes into your house through a window may change and the sun might come further into a room. Make sure that plants that are in the shade over summer don't get too much sun and scorch their foliage as a result. Resist the temptation of potting up your plant when the weather is cold, even if your plant looks overgrown or it's overcrowded in the pot. Your plant won't put on enough new growth to cope with the extra soil around its roots in a larger pot, so the soil will stay wetter for longer and you run the risk of roots rotting and dying. So hold off from repotting it until the weather warms up again. Also, when watering, make sure your plant is fully drained and isn't sitting in a pool of water, which can also rot the roots. So while you keep warm in winter, make sure your plants are also looked after.
Alliums are a veggie garden classic. I know at my place when it's dinner time, one of the first things I'm reaching out for is a homegrown onion. And don't even start me on the garlic. But they can be tricky to get growing well. And Josh is here to share with us some of his methods and introduce us to a few future favourites.
There's something enriching about tilling soil. Preparing a garden bed like this so it's weed-free also has practical benefits, especially if you're growing crops that hate competition, like the alliums, which includes onions, garlic, leeks and chives. And now is the time to plant them, while there's still some autumn warmth in the soil to get them started, and then they'll happily grow through winter. In preparation for planting, I'm working in some compost. The soil should be loose and free draining, fertile but not too rich. There's a range of ways to grow alliums, and I'm going to start with bulbs. This is elephant garlic, which is actually a type of leek, but you grow it and eat it the same way you would do with garlic. Have a look at the size of it. Now, just like regular garlic, you should always source your stock from a local grower or a nursery for best results. Bulbs should be planted as individual clothes. Plant out the chunkiest ones. They'll produce stronger plants and give you a bigger return at harvest time in late spring when the plants die down. Planting could not be easier. Put them in the ground, pointy side up, which is where the shoot comes from. And plant them deep enough to cover with about 5 centimetres of soil. Space them 15 to 20 centimetres apart along the row. Then cover over with soil. What do you get when you cross a shallot with a Welsh onion? No, it's not the beginning of a bad joke. You get a walking onion. Now, like regular onions, they will produce an underground bulb. But instead of producing flowers at the end of the stem, they produce little bulbils like these. And as the plant grows and the bulbils develop and get heavy, the stem bends over. When the bulbils touch the soil, they develop roots, they germinate, hence the idea of a walking onion. You can plant either bulbs or bulbils, like I'm doing here. They need some room to walk, so place them around 40 centimetres apart. Every part of the plant is edible. Use the leaves and bulbils like spring onions, and the larger mature underground bulb like a regular onion. Speaking of onions, you can grow them from seed. I find it's best to do this in a tray filled with seed raising mix. Don't worry too much about the spacing of the individual seeds. Once the seedlings have established, you can gently separate them before planting out. Now, I could have bought onion seedlings from the nursery to get off to a quicker start. But the beauty of growing from seed is you can try things that are a little less common. Here I'm sowing an heirloom variety. It's Italian. It's called Long Red Florence. It's mild and sweet. And you can harvest the plants young, like a shallot, or harvest them mature and roast them. Chives are an allium must-have and perfectly suited to a pot in a sunny spot alongside your other herbs. I'm planting 2 varieties, garlic chives, which are quite pungent and they have a flat leaf. And also onion chives, which are much milder, and you can tell the difference because they have a round leaf. They're hardy, clumping plants and will happily grow side by side. Just pick a few leaves when needed and cut back hard and fertilise them to freshen them up. When they fill up the pot, just pull them out, divide them up and repot. Alliums really are a fascinating group and essential to so much of the cooking that we do. I'm well set for the season ahead. Which ones are you going to try?
Millie and Tammy are back in the thick of it at the Flower and Garden Show, getting the scoop on even more award-winning horticulture.
MIFGS is pretty much like the Glastonbury Festival for gardeners, and you never know which rock star you might bump into.
I think it's Jake.
Courtney.
Oh, I'll buy you one. I'll get you one.
Well,
Good to see you. Do you want to share my ice cream?
No. And what are you loving so far?
What I really love is that it's a mixture of designers and landscapers and florists and horticulturalists and growers of plants, because everyone loves plants.
You can lick that ice cream while we're talking.
Before
She's got to deal with that. That's important.
Oh my God. See you.
While I leave Jane to sort her ice cream out, I'm heading to one of my favourite gardens this year, Seisei Te 2 by Koji Ninomiya.
My garden, yes.
Oh, there's a lot going on. Koji is a star of the International Garden Circuit, having won 5 gold medals at the acclaimed Chelsea Flower Show.
My basic idea, this is, human beings must be live together with nature, yeah? And Western and Eastern together. Eastern's idea is natural, but not much flower in the Kyoto garden. Yeah. But in England, they have nice and beautiful flowers, flowering garden. So I believed myself, this is showing the direction for the near future's garden. Yeah.
It's to have fusion of both.
That's right. Yeah.
Past the English rose garden, the landscape shows all the hallmarks of a Japanese design.
Water is the symbol of the life. Yeah, we started from the top of the, and our life also started, and the coming down toward the waterfalls, cascade, and into the pond and the sea. So this is the image of the waves in the sea. Yeah.
In the deepest part of the garden, Koji has designed a peaceful resting place.
You can feel it's natural. Plants can understand somebody's walking into here, he's or she loves the plant or not. They can feel it. So that I believe it. So be friendly with plants and nature will friendly to you, yeah? That's my philosophy of the making the garden.
Be kind to nature, and you know she rewards us too.
Yeah. So you are the same group of me. Yeah. Okay.
I think gardeners understand.
Yeah.
Another gold medal garden and winner of a swag of awards, including Best in Show, is Through the Looking Glass, designed by Emmeline Bowman and constructed by Liam Riley. One of our own former guest presenters, Emmeline has long been an advocate for using local plants. Congratulations!
I can't believe it. I'm really excited.
So many ideas here, but again, hanging on to those beautiful Australian plants.
Every time I do anything, I want people to be encouraged or to be enlightened or to get that information where they can start doing their own little bits in their garden to encourage wildlife, to have a better sustainable footprint, to use Indigenous plants, local species to encourage our local insects, all those sort of things, and make it still beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I've watched people walk past and that is their response straight away. Oh gosh, isn't that gorgeous? That's so pretty, that's so beautiful. And I think, you know, a lot of people would walk past this garden and not even know it's a native garden. They'll just think it's a beautiful cottage garden.
That's right, but I've been banging on for years. I always say if there's a European type of plant that everyone likes to use, there's always an Australian version of them. And that could help some little critter, some little insect, and that's what I always pop them into the garden for.
Yes.
It's like even like we've got the native tobacco plant over there, chocolate lilies, all those sort of things. They're just beautiful. They look like meadow gardens from Europe or something, yeah.
Titled Through the Looking Glass, this garden invites us to see the hidden beauty that surrounds us.
It's all about concealed ecosystems, so everything underneath your feet and how that creates like the healthy ecosystem. So I have an aquarium window which looks underneath the pond.
Yep.
Because we really need to look after our waterways. So healthy water systems means that you've got obviously water source for wildlife, but it trickles through into your plants. And we also have a soil window which looks into the soil networks, root systems, fungi, how insects start to, biodegrade all of those materials, and that gets uplifted through the plant. I wanted that nerdy sort of part to come out because we are learning so much more about these, things we don't see. I want everyone to know that you can create these beautiful spaces, but in a way that you are still thinking about all of the animals, the insects, everything. We're all part of a system, and that's what this is, one big system.
Garden shows are such great places to get a dose of inspiration. Oh, I like a crunch. And get an ice cream too.
We owe so much to our healthcare workers, and it goes without saying that the jobs they do are not easy. So what better way to unwind after a busy shift than out in the garden? Our next story is with a doctor and a nurse who are doing just that.
So growing up in Canberra, I have like really lovely memories of being quite young and just always spending every day outside. And I remember thinking from a young age like how cool that was, like just watching fruit and vegetables grow and having that abundance available. I'm Connor, I'm a local Canberran, I'm a foodie, I'm a nurse. I live here with my partner, Kai, and we spend most of our time in and amongst the garden with the veggies and the flowers. Both working in demanding, stressful healthcare jobs, it's so lovely to walk through the garden barefoot just to sort of get that sensation of touching the grass and grounding us. It's very calm and meditative. So many. Finally got some red ones. So Kai and I met about 8 years ago at a cafe. He was a barista and I was a chef at the time, and I think we just hit it off with a mutual love of food. And I was like growing a little bit at my share house at the time, but when he kind of got stuck in and involved, that was when it really started to flourish. I have been gardening at share houses or rentals for about 10 years, and lots of lessons learnt along the way. A few things I love about pots is that it's really accessible to anyone. And as long as you are aware of a couple of things, you need to be a little bit more like caring of the plants because that's the small vessel. So topping up with regular fertilising and making sure that you're keeping the water up to them. So blueberries we've had in pots and we have just incredible success with that. And then you can bring them with you, if you have to move. It was very exciting to finally find our own place. We looked at the large chunk of lawn and we thought we know exactly what you're going to be. I had been inspired by multiple segments actually on Gardening Australia about the concept of a no-dig veggie patch. The idea is that you just layer compost and hay and soil on top so that it produces a much richer soil structure. And so drainage is improved and nutrient retention is improved as well. I just love so much Millie Ross's philosophy of for every veggie, I think she considers planting a flower or something that's going to attract pollinators. I think it took a little bit of convincing. Kai thought, well, can't they be just more productive vegetable patches? But he's certainly come around. I do pick specific plants, so salvias, as well as I always let fennel go to seed because it gets these really nice umbels, which are really attractive to the pollinators and the bees in particular. And we've just seen heaps and heaps and heaps of them over summer. So maybe I'll try and pot up some of these seedlings because they're getting a bit leggy. Thank you. We have no hard rules in the garden. I love to just plant what we like and what we think will work. And just have a go. Some things don't work, but that's okay. It's all part of the process. You have to remember to maintain that sense of play and fun in the garden. It's been good for our relationship, I think, because we have to negotiate, well, who does what and what aesthetic we're going to aim for. Kai's the handyman, the landscaping, the construction. I was very impressed. He's just knocked up some raised garden beds recently and also 2 really sturdy compost heaps. That leaves me to sort of do the more soft tending to the garden. Kai loves his pumpkins, so we've got Queensland Blue, Butternut, and an interesting French heirloom variety, which we're hoping will work. Looks great. As well as lots and lots of tomatoes, lots of varieties, both in the patch and on the deck in pots as well. We always plant marigold and some edible flowers and basil in between those, so pesto's on its way. The zucchinis were incredible this year and they're unbelievably still producing. There's some eggplants, and some large black ones and some fairy tale eggplants. A bunch of chilies have just come through and they're reddening up and ripening up, which I'm really excited for. Oh, cool, and there's green ones up here as well. Do you reckon they're tasty green? Who knows? We can have a go. And tomatillos, which are kind of unusual still for people. We've always got a bumper crop of that to make some salsa verde. And the potatoes are ready to harvest. Wow, I didn't know they would be this productive. I reckon this might be the best one we've done. The amazing kind of byproduct of growing your own vegetables is you're going to eat them. So what we notice is we're eating more seasonally, which is good for the environment. But we're also eating more fruit and vegetables generally.
Straight to Instagram.
I love to just share food with people and share those recipes and things that I create with others for them to be inspired to make as well. Hello, everyone.
Wow, that's nice.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Char-grilled zucchini.
Amazing. Oh my God, look at this.
Chippies. It's pulled out nearly hours ago.
Oh, today?
Yes. I was going to make it that one. There's such a wonderful community of gardeners online, and a lot of people were kind of surprised by just how many fruits and vegetables you can successfully grow in Canberra. I think that the garden and growing vegetables and cooking food is essential to who I am because I love to nurture people. And I think in a sense, the garden becomes part of your family because you're raising it, you're nurturing it, and then you get to enjoy the fruitful joy of eating the produce and sharing it with others. Beautiful.
I will do that.
It's time to fill your tank with all the ideas you need to get busy this weekend. You ready? Winter has finally begun, but in cool temperate gardens, resist the urge to prune deciduous fruit trees until the end of this month to ensure that they're well and truly into winter dormancy. If your garden is lacking some cool colour and fragrance, pop in some stock. This annual is perfect for pots and bedding and has the most delicious spice-scented flowers. Fruit trees in a small space? No dramas. Look for bare-rooted miniature or multi-grafted stone and pome fruits at your local nursery now. Perfect plants for small spots or large pots. In warm temperate gardens, it's the perfect weekend to check your tree ties. Replace broken or frayed ties, loosen any that are too tight around trunks, and take off forgotten plant tags. Keep a lookout for the native cotton bush, Spiridium scortecnii. a stunning shrub that puts on a glorious winter display of rusty coloured flower buds followed by white flowers. Amazing azaleas and ravishing rhododendrons are hitting their peak flowering period now. But if your plants are all bud and no bloom, feed them with fertiliser appropriate for acid-loving plants. Subtropical gardeners, if rain has left your soil sopping wet, let it drain before digging. Working damp soil leads to a loss of soil structure, so wait a while before hoeing in. For a very tasty, very vigorous vine, give kiwi fruits a crack at your place. Deciduous and delicious, make sure you grab at least one male plant for every few females for fine fruiting. Brew up a batch of winter weed tea. Whack weeds into a cloth bag, submerge in a bucket of water for a week or two, dilute the liquid down, and you've got yourself a great winter weed tea. Gardeners in the tropics have a go at tomatoes over winter. Hunt down some of the tropic or Russian varieties which are proven performers in humid areas of the country. Fuchsias flower on new growth, so to promote blooms and bushiness, pinch prune the growing tips this weekend and give them a hard prune at the end of winter. Grevilleas give gorgeous winter colour to almost any garden, and their beautiful blooms will attract birds and beneficials to your place. Grab one or two from your local native nursery. Arid gardeners, as the weather cools, many of us slow down a bit, including worms. Ensure worm farms are not being overfilled with food, as the worms have a winter rest. Cape gooseberries are ready to harvest now, and the fruits can be eaten fresh, turned into a preserve, or even dried. Make sure you get to yours before the birds do. To extend your potted basil harvest, move them to a sunny spot for the winter so they're sheltered from frost. And hey pesto, you'll be enjoying basil for months to come. Welcome to Winter Gardeners. Get out into the garden, the bush, or even your local park and spend some time enjoying the world around you. Let us know what you get up to on our GA Facebook page. Well, that's all we have time for, but the shelves are stacked for next week. Here's what's in store.
I'm visiting a steep south-facing home garden that's so shady that parts of it see no sun over most of winter. And yet the owners manage to produce food year-round. I'm getting essence of strawberry as well. Whoa, nice!
If you want some spectacular winter colour in your garden and you want something that's easy to care for and looks good in a vase, I'm going to show you an iconic ancient family of plants.
And cooler months in the garden are such a beautiful time for observation, contemplation, and getting things done. And I've got stacks to do.